Over the past few days, I've been going through lots of games by Viktor Korchnoi and just, reacquainting myself with his style. It's fascinating to see how direct he was on the chessboard. In life, he was a very direct man. He spoke very courageously, he said what he thought about things. But that really comes across on the chessboard as well, how direct he was. And, well, I'd like to show you a couple of endgames that I think illustrate this very well. We saw in this rook and pawn endgame this victory over Karpov that levelled the scores at 5-5 in Baguio. A certain directness there, and you can see this in this game. So this was played in Lugano 1982, an open tournament that Korchnoi won with 8 out of 9. Fabulous score. He defeated Spassky on the way, and this game was played against Klaus Bischoff, who went on to become a very well-known grandmaster in Germany and very active as a commentator. One of my co-commentators on the ChessBase site. So here, well, Korchnoi has a big positional advantage, and it's all about space. So it's a kind of Morozzi bind, but there's no pressure on Black's centre, and of course it's all about this pawn weakness on d3 now. And here, if the rook comes back to protect that pawn, well, the problem is there's a pin on the d file, so huge problems here. So Bischoff advanced the d pawn, and now no rush from Korchnoi. First of all, just improves his pieces a little bit. White can't really do anything in this position, and then he exchanged on d4 and played king d5. And here, of course, Black could take a pawn, but well, it's not such a big deal taking this. But of course, Black is a lot better in this position, but there's still some work to do. The way Korchnoi played was far more convincing because, well, first of all, let's put a rook on the open file. Check. Bischoff chose to block. Korchnoi exchanged, and then he played c4. I think this would have been the move if the king had moved to the side anyway. In this case, you can see that this white pawn blocks any attack to the king, so the king is very secure, and Korchnoi has given himself a nice passed pawn on c4. So Bischoff played king f3. Now clearly there's a threat to play e4 to drive the king away. Here I can imagine that most players would simply play f5. Just prevent e4 being played, nice blockade on the light squares, and then think again what to do. And there's no doubt that Black has a huge positional advantage here. Still got to break through. I mean, it might be an idea to try and move the king out of the way, put the knight on d5, that's a possibility. Maybe an advance of kingside pawns. Well, Black has a big positional advantage, but fascinating to see here that Korchnoi didn't play that calm move, but instead he saw another possibility. c3. This is amazing. So he gives up his pride and joy, this passed c pawn, and this allows the king in. Fantastic idea. When you see it, you think, oh yeah, very simple. But it's the fact that he thought differently to everyone else. He didn't play the obvious move f5, but instead saw this possibility. That, I think, is amazing. So, well, this king is just coming in, so Bischoff brought his king back, but the king is just taking this pawn. And now he has a lovely passed a pawn. Many people here would take that pawn. probably also very good for black. But no, Korchnoi is more direct. Doesn't bother with taking the pawn, he just wants to support this a-pawn coming down the board and hassles the bishop. So in this way he maintains the initiative and doesn't give white a chance to try and defend. Bishop takes knight, and now pawn takes. So this pawn, supported by the king, is deadly. King a3. Now king c2 is probably the best defence here, but there's no doubt that black is winning that position. Instead, well, rook c2 played, and white went down very quickly here. Now, got to be a little bit careful. If b2, then king c2, and watch out for this one. But instead, very nice winning move, rook a7, preventing the check, and then the pawn and the king just shuffle down and make a queen. Really beautiful technique. And yes, just so direct. Take a look at this position as well. Let me show you one more game. Korchnoi is a pawn up. He has the white pieces, and you can see that he has wonderful queenside pawns here. I showed this to a few people, and almost without exception, they wanted to push these pawns straight away. You know, either a4 or b5. I mean, this might well be winning, but once black gets a blockade on these dark squares, then it becomes problematic. It's not so simple. You know, the king comes up. How exactly do you get that breakthrough? Korchnoi's solution was, well, just again so direct, and well, perhaps a little bit unexpected for many people who I've certainly for those people that I showed this game to. So bishop c4. Well, if the rook ducks away from the d file, then of course white's rook enters, and that must be very strong. So Ljubojevic took, I should say this is a game Korchnoi Ljubojevic played in London tournament in 1980. And now, again, pushing the pawn straight away doesn't get you very far. The king needs to be in place first. So this was the whole point of the rook exchange. That suddenly this king has a free avenue, free path towards the king's queen side. Now, if the black king comes across, the white king comes in. Here, king a6 possible, but in this case we could also just clean up these pawns. That's really simple. So first Ljubojevic tries to do something about the kingside pawns, doesn't really help. The king comes in, and well, this is desperation. Of course, he knew he was losing. Bishop takes pawn, and c6, and there's no way to stop this pawn. So there we go. It's all about getting the king in position first, and well, hopefully you can see the similarity between these two positions, and indeed the World Championship game against Karpov. I'll try and produce a few more videos with Korchnoi over the next few weeks. I've just been so once again so impressed by his play, and I hope you enjoy them.